France is currently banning. The country is being characterized by riots, looting, and also a lot of rage towards law enforcement and the kind of force that they're using. Now, there are two things into this story. One, nobody is talking about it the way they would talk about it if it was an African country. We haven't seen travel advisories. We haven't seen people saying France is not a safe place. And the looting and the rioting is being blamed on immigrants. People are now saying, and coverage is like, France allowed immigrants into their country. Look at how they're ruining their country. Hello guys, how are you doing? Welcome to another episode of our conversations. My name is Ondiro Oganga. I am a business journalist by profession and a digital content creator, and I talk all matters Africa, Black people, our empowerment, and how we can rise up and take our rightful place at the global stage. So the past few weeks have been very tumultuous for France. There have been riots on the streets, and the riots have been getting more worse and worse by the day. You might think that some of these countries, because they know everything in terms of democracy, in terms of human rights, in terms of peace and stability, things would not get out of hand like this. But if you check social media and even mainstream media, the videos that have been coming out, it's like the riots are turning into violent protests, and there's just a lot going on. There's looting. There've been videos of rioters looting car stores, rioters looting motorbike stores. The roads are being set on fire, and there's a lot of push and pull between the people and the police. Now, most recently, the riots were exacerbated by the fact that the police used excessive violence on a child. A 17-year-old boy was shot dead by the police. The police lied about it. They said that the child was driving towards the police, and that's why they were forced to, pull the trigger. But footage from that very event shows otherwise. They pulled over the boy, and nobody knows what transpired between them. And then they pulled out a weapon and shot him. And unfortunately, the boy died. And so there has been a lot of rage. The public has been very enraged about the fact that the police not only used brute force, but also murdered a child. And the protests are getting more violent and more serious out in the streets. This is not the first time that France is having problems with protests. You remember the yellow vest protests. So protests are nothing new in France. It's just they keep getting more and more serious. And it looks like the government is not even bothered to do anything to calm the tensions that are consistently running high in the country. You also have to remember that in the whole of Europe, France's police force is the most brute, and they get away with a lot. So this is a force that uses more force. This is a police unit that uses more force than any other European country, and they get away with it because there's very little to no accountability in the country. And even if you remember during the Black Lives Matter, even people in France came out to demonstrate because they've lived through the brutality of the police. The reason why I'm bringing up this video is because if all these things were happening in Africa, if cars were being looted from stores, if motorbikes were being looted from stores, if the police had shot a child, if riots were getting a little more heated and tension was running high in the country, the way the West would have reacted is very different. The way the media would have covered it is very different. We would have seen a lot of headlines saying country X in Africa is not safe. Those people are just rioting. Nobody would care the reason why people are out in the streets. We would see a lot of travel advisories. We would see the West coming out and admonishing the leader of the country and saying, put your house in order. People cannot keep going to the streets for no good reason. And we've even seen it in Kenya. Anytime we have riots, the West will intervene and say, give the opposition what they want, or bring them on the table and have a conversation with them, because this does not necessarily look good. We're yet to see any Western power come out and call out France on what's going on in their country. Nobody is trying to hold President Emmanuel Macron accountable. Nobody is asking him what is currently going on in France, and as the president of the country, what are you trying to do to calm the tension that is running very high in the country? A majority of the people in your country are angry at you, are angry at the way you run the government, are angry at the force that the police use. What are you doing to address some of these challenges? Nobody is holding that man accountable to anything. Nobody is saying France is not safe. Nobody is saying that. In fact, African leaders were in France on the month of June for a financial conference, But if the same thing was happening in an African country and we had a big conference that was going to bring heads of states onto the continent, they would have postponed it and canceled it, saying it's not safe, tensions are so high, maybe we'll try another time. So there's a sort of double standard that African countries are always held towards a certain standard when tensions run high in their country. While on the other hand, the European counterparts are almost given a free pass. The other thing I wanted to address in this video is the fact that now we're hearing people say that, the riots are because France allowed too many immigrants into their country, and that's why the protests have gotten out of hand. I have seen several people online saying it's because France allowed immigrants into their country. That's why they're looting stores. That's why they're looting the car store, the motorbike store. That is why they're banning stuff during protests. That's why they're having a push and pull with the police. And I just cannot help but wonder, how is it that these people hold immigrants with very low regard? Do you think that somebody who escaped their country and is trying to make a better life for themselves in your country it's just, there's very little sense of responsibility from some of the people that are saying these things. This is your country and it's burning. You better take a sense of responsibility. Blaming it on other people because it doesn't look good doesn't make you look good. If anything, it makes you look bad. Africans are not thieves, Some are. And not all French people are thieves, but some are. And that's the reality that you have to accept. And when you go to France and say you're given French citizenship, they never want you to associate with where you came from. So when they do bad things, they're Africans. When they do good things, they're French. It doesn't work like that. But the bottom line is these protests are solely because of certain deep systemic issues that are not working in the country of France. And it's not Africans that broke the system. It's French people that broke the own French system. And it's French people saying, this French system is not working for us anymore, and they're going out to protest. So to blame the aftermath of the protest on Africans because it doesn't look good, or on immigrants because somebody has to be blamed, the French have to remain blameless in this situation, does not make sense. Immigrants are not French citizens. Africans are not French citizens. If anything, you don't even want them there. They'll go back to their homes one day should stability resume, right? Or should the economies get better. So I think this fight is purely a French fight, and blaming the aftermath of the riots on immigrants and Africans just because it doesn't look good on you is not fair. It's not fair to the immigrants, and it's also not fair to you because you have to take accountability. Change is not cheap. Change is not easy. There's a huge price you pay for change to come. And if you're not willing to take responsibility and accountability for the price that you have to pay for change, then honestly, you're not ready for change. A child was brutally murdered in the streets. If you think that people getting out in the streets and protesting over the brutal murder of a child is immigrant behavior, then you're the immigrant because you do not belong on this planet. There's a huge infringement on human life. A child lost their life. A child lost their life, and you have a problem with people protesting. You have a problem with how the protests look and the aesthetics of it to the international community. You're the problem. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what you think, if there's been double standard in the coverage of the French riots, and if the French president is not being held accountable to the same scale as other African presidents would have been if this was happening in their country. And also let me know what you think about, immigrants being blamed for the aftermath of the rioting. I'll see you again next time.